Good morning. Welcome everybody to the Kankakee County Board meeting for July 14th, 2020. If you could please stand for today's invocation.
Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If I can get a roll call, please, Dan.
Mr. Hess.
Present.
Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk.
Present.
Mr. Snipes. Present. Mr. Byrne. Mr. Seroy.
Present. Present.
Mr. Lear.
Present.
Mrs. Weber.
Present.
Mrs. Peters.
Present.
Mr. Payton. Mrs. Parker.
Present.
Ms. Dunbar.
Present.
Mr. Kinzinger. Mr. Fairfield.
Peyton is here.
Mr. Fairfield. Mr. Zenz.
Present.
Ms. Haas.
Present.
Mr. Carrico.
Present.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Present.
Mr. Smith.
Present.
Mr. Swanson.
Present.
Ms. Zakulo.
Present.
Mr. Featherling.
Present.
Mr. Donnell.
Present.
Mr. Miller.
Present.
Mr. Long.
Here.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Present.
Mr. Wheeler.
Present.
We have a quorum.
We have a quorum.
Fairfield's here.
You got you right. Under public commentary, per the protocol, we're going to be calling a few people that have registered for public comment. In just a moment, please.
Good morning.
Yes, is this Elliot Wickstra?
Speaking.
You have the floor, sir, for public comment.
Thank you very much. My name is Elliot Wickser. I represent Chris and Larry Sheffer. and thank you for your time here today. As you know, the petitioner requested a variation for lot width and for special use, appeared before the Zoning Board of Appeals and for the County of Kankakee. As you also know, the property is an agricultural zoning district in which the property lies. The property is situated, of course, in Limestone Township. The request for special use should be denied, and there's several reasons for that. But in the record before the Zoning Board, which I'm sure you've seen also, and I'll be very brief, for about approximately 10 years, this property has been used as an industrial cement crushing facility by the petitioner. Make no mistake about it, the property is being used for very high intense industrial use, but in an agricultural district. Now, my review of the records, the public records outside the Zoning Board of Appeals, I could not find ever that a special use permit had been issued prior to the Zoning Board approving the petition for that special use filed by the petitioner. So the petitioner has been using the property, in my estimation, illegally. The Zoning Board of Appeals vote, it really should have been unanimously in denial of the petition for a special use permit. It is clear, based on the testimony, both the petitioner and the public at the public hearing, that there are about 150 trucks, semi-trailer trucks, large vehicles entering and exiting this property at a minimum. The trucks come and go on weekends. I know now it appears the petitioner has paved the property, but there's noise, there's noise pollution, there's regular truck pollution, and again, an otherwise agricultural setting, a country setting. The property, or at the Zoning Board, there were pictures from the spring of 2020 submitted. Everyone can see what's going on in the property. I don't think there's any question it is happening. It is also clear that every neighbor complained of the loud noise, the crushing of the cement, the vibration from the petitioner's property as a result of the petitioner's business operation, which again has been occurring without the issuance of a special use permit, which is required. There's been burning of material that has been happening. I know that was a big contentious issue before the Zoning Board. The petitioner uses front loaders, tractors to dump the cement into trailers and dump trucks. Again, constant noise and dust. The crushing of the material, that there's, aside from the truck traffic kicking up dust, the dust that is created by the crushing of the material is ending up on neighbors' homes, in their pools, on their fences, on their cars. The road being used for ingress and egress to the subject property is really not the type of road that allows for this type of heavy industrial use. All of this information that I've set out is in the record before the Zoning Board. So, therefore, the petitioner's petition for a special use permit should not have been granted for two reasons. First, the petitioner provided really no evidence at the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing that the property and the requested high impact, the industrial use, can meet the standards for the issuance of a special use permit. There's no evidence of it. The evidence is to the contrary. It actually reveals unequivocally, we think, that the standards of the issuance of special use permit cannot be met for the following reasons. First, as required, the petitioner had to show that the establishment, maintenance, or operation of the special use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. And as is indicated in my comments a few minutes ago, to the contrary, all of the adjacent property owners testified about the weekly parade of the 150 trucks, the dust that was kicked up, the dust created by the crushing of the materials, the smoke, the noise, the vibrations. Again, these folks bought property in an agricultural, country-style atmosphere. And also the fact that the roadway is being torn up. They cannot meet the first requirement, which again is a requirement under the Kankakee County zoning ordinance. Two, the special use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of the other property in the immediate vicinity, and for the purposes of what's already permitted. That's standard set forth again in the county zoning board ordinance, or the zoning ordinance. that's required. The petitioner had to prove that it would not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of the properties in the immediate vicinity. That means the neighbors. And as I mentioned above, without going through the facts again, it just can't. It just can't. It cannot be done based on the testimony in the public record. And we talked, number 3, the petitioner had to prove that the establishment of the special use will not be substantially impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding property for the uses permitted in the district. And if I was, speaking personally, and I think all of the people at the zoning board who have properties adjacent to this property, there is no way that any person would want to buy, develop, or use the property for its current use given this proposed special use by the petitioner. The adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, or necessary facilities have or will be provided. Again, that's a requirement the petitioner had to show. He did not. There's no evidence. There was a lot of talk about how the EPA passed on this or did not pass on this. That was something the petitioner could have shown but did not show. There's evidence of the buildup of the property, filling in the property, creating flooding and water on the other adjacent properties. To the contrary, the petitioner cannot meet this item and therefore cannot, should not be granted a special use permit. And again, we talked about adequate measures have or will be taken to provide ingress and egress. Again, not done. Big, huge trucks in an agricultural zoning district adjacent to other country-style agricultural uses. And finally, but the special use will conform to the applicable regulations of the district in which it is located. And on this point, I would just say, it seems that it should be common practice that if a special use like this is going to be granted, and certainly we're not arguing for that, but there should be some restrictions placed on the use of the property, hours of operation, some type of landscaping, some type of fencing, some type of real noise abatement for the vibration and the rock crushing, cement crushing that's going on the property. So in all, I thank you for your time. However, I just want to close by saying the negative impact on these adjacent properties are so great that the county board respectfully should deny the request for a special use permit by this property owner. And I say thank you.
All righty, next up is Brian Scott. Oops. Yes, is this Brian?
It is.
Yeah, hi Brian. If you could, you're kind of muffled coming through on the phone there.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, I can hear better. Go ahead, you have the floor.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, board members. My name is Brian Scott, and I am the attorney for the applicants of DBA case 1915, Mr. and Mrs. O'Connor. My client has been a local businessman in this county for over 35 years. He supports the local economy and other local businesses that would otherwise spend the money outside Kankakee County for the services he provides at the location of his business. My client has filed an application to receive a special use permit allowed under the property's A1 zoning to enable him to recycle materials brought to him. He is not looking for any variances as incorrectly stated by a previous commenter. Despite certain opponents of my client claiming he is seeking to do otherwise, as just noted, he is not rezoning the property from A1. He is only looking for permission under the already identified special uses under A1 to conduct his business. This business, while located in an area zoned A1, is located along a street with at least 2 other businesses that are non-agricultural related. One is an auto body shop. The other apparently fabricates storage tanks for a variety of purposes. As you may learn or already be aware, the property my client is trying to operate his business on for years before he owned it was previously used for purposes that are no longer permitted on the property. Many in the area recall this period and have apparently confused that time with what my client hopes is a new chapter for the property's history. Indeed, my client has actively sought to achieve his neighbor's approval of his business activities through educating them and looking for ways to alleviate issues, both real and perceived, to prevent them from feeling he is anything but a good neighbor. My client, after opening his business and working with the IEPA and EPA, learned he should ensure his business should be zoned properly and undertook this process with the desire to ensure he legally operates his business. During this time, he has worked to be a good neighbor by attempting to remedy neighbor concerns and issues along the way, which many of you, if you have spoken with the people surrounding this property, may already be aware of. Throughout this process, all he has wanted is a fair process that has reviewed facts to grant him the sought-after special use permit to operate a heavy processing facility in this location, again, as permitted under the A1 zoning ordinance. While my client has acknowledged his mistakes along the way during this process, these mistakes are a far cry from many false accusations and baseless claims made by some to prevent him from obtaining this permit. Moreover, my client is looking to comply with all laws, both county, state, and federal, to ensure he is able to continue this business. He hopes and believes this is an opportunity for people to operate businesses lawfully that may have been under the incorrect belief about what they may and may not do on their land. As I'm sure you are all aware, one of the main goals of any legal process should be compliance and not just punishment. Reviewing the facts here, my client hopes the board sees and determines the benefits outweigh the cost for approving my client's special use permit so that others operating businesses outside the law will look to coming from the shadows and into compliance as well. My client continues to work hard to ensure he minimally intrudes upon his neighbors while working at his business. This is evidenced by the conditions he is volunteered to place on himself to obtain this permit. Nevertheless, as you listen to concerns raised by neighbors, please remember to focus on the claims made and the facts and evidence that do not support these claims. In spite of many statements that would lead you to believe otherwise, my client has and continues to be in compliance with both the IEPA and EPA. The facts, which you will find in the record, that include letters from the road commissioner and fire department, which also refute what a previous caller claims about the road issues, in this case should be closely scrutinized to come to the conclusion that my client wants to operate a legally permissible business under the zoning ordinances with conditions to ensure he has not offended and does not offend his neighbors. He would like to continue to operate lawfully under both state and federal law to ensure his livelihood and those businesses in that area that rely on him. Again, my client would simply like you to make sure that you focus on the facts in the record, which will be evidenced by the findings of fact and conditions accepted by the Planning Commission at the previous level. I thank you for your time.
All right. Next is Lori Foster.
Hi, this is Lori.
Hi, Lori. This is Andy Wheeler at the county board meeting. You have the floor for public comment.
Hi. Okay. Basically, I've never done anything like this before, and so bear with me. I own the property at 152 South 5000 West Road, which is immediately north of Ron O'Connor's property. I bought the property in 1999 and built a barn and built a home here. I love this property because it was beautiful with trees, and it reminded me of where I was from in Western New York, my hometown of 2,000 people. And I just love I call it my sanctuary. Over the years, I built a home. I have a pool. It's a lovely place for me to relax after being, at my job all the time and that kind of thing. I've been a business owner in Kankakee County for 25 years. And Ron bought the property next door to me. When I bought this property, I liked it because it was agriculture on both sides. And even though there was a residential area up the street, you know, I liked the fact that this was going to be a place that was going to be quiet, and it would be nice for me to be able to have my home and my horses. When Ron bought his property south of me, he said he was going to move his clean cutting property business to that property and build his home there eventually. And I was like, that's great. That's wonderful. Ron's a nice guy. I thought that'll be a great neighbor. Things progressed differently than that, and he started dumping on that property, digging giant holes and dumping I guess, road waste into those things and building that property up. Over the years, I've seen my property flood far more than it ever used to. I mean, obviously in the spring it would get wet and that kind of thing. I now have standing water in many places on my property that never had standing water. Over the last 4 years, I have a pond on the backside of my property that I've ridden around with my horses. And over the last 4 years, that pond used to be empty 10 months out of the year practically. It's now full, and where I used to ride is now a marshland. It does not dry. And so that's concerning to me. The other thing that's concerning to me is the fact that there is constant truck traffic next door. The truck traffic is all day long. It's, you know, after 6 o'clock many times. It's on the weekend. There's actually a truck. I'm sitting out back right now. There's a truck running up the driveway right now. And just the noise, it's become overwhelming. And then I also have a problem with the dust. I have a pool. I've had a pool since 2006. I know this property well, and I know what goes on. The last 2 years, I've noticed in my pool, there's a constant, I would call it silt maybe, and every day that I clean the pool, this gray silt is on the bottom of the pool, and I literally can never get it all up. And so there's a constant level of that from the dust that comes from next door. And I just feel that, you know, this is was not how I intended this property to be. I wanted it to be a place where I could always come and relax and have friends over and, you know, and just have a peaceful time. And that's not what has happened. You know, we do have, you know, there are fires next door. We do have ash that comes onto my property from time to time from the fires. I look out my bedroom window, and I used to see burned out buses. I don't see those anymore. He moved them to the back of the property. He has put up a barrier line so that it kind of blocks what I can see over there. He has semi-trailers there. And it's just one of those things, like I said, I like Ron. He's a great guy, but it's not what I had anticipated when I spent the money and invested in a home on this property. And I pay almost $20,000 a year in property taxes. And I feel that sometimes my voice isn't heard, and not that and so it's been a little bit frustrating for me. And, you know, eventually if I try to sell this property, I'm concerned that somebody's going to look at the next door and say, well, we don't want that. It's not pretty. There's noise constantly, you know, and that kind of thing. And just the dust that's created and the sound pollution and the flooding. Those are my biggest concerns with what's happening next door to me right now. And like I said, when I bought it, I thought I was zoned ag on each side, so I thought it would kind of be a little safe, and that's not what's happened. You know, and so I'm hoping that the board going forward will take that into consideration. You know, this is a residential neighborhood, with the exception of Ron's Shepherd's Auto Body Shop, but that shop is a very well-kept, very quiet shop. I don't see a lot of traffic going up and down the street with that. You know, I don't see that, or I have trucks constantly stop by my house, up the driveway, by my house, up the driveway. And, you know, and it's, I think COVID has kind of opened my eyes up to it more than ever, because I've been home more, because I haven't been able to work as much. And so I'm just hoping the board takes all of that into consideration as what it's doing to a very, very quiet, very peaceful road. And, you know, and they take that into consideration. And I think, you know, that's all I really have to say. I just, you know, I just hope that we can see some changes, or at least some modifications, so that, you know, there's not trucks running constantly, and there's not dust constantly, and the flooding has been just, it's changed what I can do with what my downtime is. I can no longer ride out back around where the pond was because it's constantly flooded. And even my lawnmowers said a few weeks ago, they're like, they can't get the lawn mowed in certain areas. They're like, it's never, I've had the same kid mow my lawn for 10 years. And he's like, I have never been not being able to get into this corner in 10 years. And he can't get into one corner because it's wet constantly. And, you know, in that, it's just a frustrating situation. And I think that's all I really have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That was the end of the 15 minutes. Is there any motions on the floor? I have more public comment if the board wants to extend it.
So moved.
All right, who made that motion? I apologize.
I'll move the way extended.
It was, okay,
Second.
Mr. Kinzinger, and then a second from,
I'll
Second.
you want to pick one?
It's not.
Oh, Mr. Tholen, sorry. We get a delay, so then 3 or 4 seconds show up at the same time. It's tough. All those in favor of extending for 5 minutes?
Aye.
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 Those opposed, same side.
To vote, roll call on every vote.
I'm sorry?
Is it supposed to be roll call on every vote on Zoom meetings?
Sure. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess,
Aye.
Mr. Tholen,
Aye.
Mrs. Polk,
Aye.
Mr. Snipes,
Aye.
Mr. Byrne,
Aye.
Mr. Seroy,
Aye.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mrs. Weber,
Aye.
Mrs. Peters,
Aye.
Mr. Payton, Mrs. Parker, Ms. Dunbar,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield,
Aye.
Mr. Zenz,
Aye.
Ms. Haas,
Aye.
Mr. Carrico,
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo,
Aye.
Mr. Featherling,
Aye.
Mr. Donnell,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Long,
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Miss calling Ron O'Connor, the applicant.
Hello.
Hey, Mr. O'Connor, you're at the county board meeting. You have the floor for public comment.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Ron O'Connor, and I'm calling in about the special use permit I'm applying for in the Limestone Township on Van Siding Road. First of all, I would like the county board members to all know that I initiated this process of this permit with the county. They did not approach me, nor have they issued any citations or violations, and to my knowledge have not had a call or a complaint about my business on this property that I've owned since 2006. Those calls all started coming in after I sent out the registered letters required by the county to start the special use process. There are 8 property owners that touch one of my lot lines on the 35-acre parcel. Each of those 8 received a certified letter informing them of my application with the county. I was told that there was a petition against my business that was emailed to each board member at the last PZA meeting last month. This document had 28 names on it, and out of the 8 immediate neighbors, only 3 of the households were on it. The other 5 households wanted to stay neutral. And the other names that are on that petition are from areas like Piper City, Chatsworth, Bourbonnais, other areas of Limestone, and of Bondfield. As I stated on the call to the PZA last month, I have had many unannounced visits from the Illinois EPA, the Kankakee County Health Department, the Kankakee Soil and Water, the Army Corps of Engineers, Buckeye Pipeline, the State Police, the County Sheriff's Police, the Limestone Fire Department, and the Limestone Road Commissioner.
Out of all these visits, not one violation, not one ticket, not one fine. There are notarized letters from the Limestone Fire Chief and the Limestone Road Commissioner clarifying the false claims that pertain to them. There are also approval letters and permits from the Illinois EPA and the Kankakee Soil and Water. All of this information is in the ZBA transcripts. I also want to touch base on who I purchased this original 55-acre parcel from. It was the Azzarelli Development Corporation. They had owned it since the early 60s, and they also had had multiple visits by some of these agencies that I have. They were not closed down by any of these organizations. However, they were fined multiple times by a few of them. So it was their choice to stop using the property as a dump and to sell it. I have cleaned the property up of all the protruding rebar and the large slabs of concrete, the I-beams, the tires. I've leveled portions of it out that had huge holes, planted grass, planted trees. I've cut waterways in parts of it. I've tiled parts of it. I formed a retention area along the north property line, and I've installed a 400-foot asphalt driveway at the entrance. My property looks like a park. There are all sorts of wildlife that roams the property. We have beehives. We've raised pumpkins on 3 or 4 acres that are farmable. My wife walks this property. It's a half of a mile long nearly every morning for at least an hour. The neighbors to the north with the horse stables ride their horses there on the weekends. I have made huge improvements, not just to my property, but neighboring properties as well, and I plan on continuing to improve the area. I realize that dust and noise from driving on the gravel portion of the road that is on my property is the largest complaint from the neighbors. I plan on installing more asphalt further back on the half-mile-long lane. This will solve the road dust problem and greatly soften the vehicle noise. I've tried my best to get along with all of the neighbors. I've heard the last call. I get along really well with Lori Foster on the north side of me, and some of the things that she has stated I've not heard. It was the first time I heard about gray soot in a pool. I didn't know anything about that, and I'd like to look further into things like that. I'd like to cure problems, not ignore them. And I think Lori or anyone else that's called and complained would say I work with them as best I can. I want to continue doing that with all of the governing bodies that are overseeing this, and any legit complaints, I want to address them. Thank you guys for your time and this consideration on this matter. I realize it's a difficult decision.
All righty. Moving on, is there any motions on the floor? I have more public comment. Does anyone want to extend it again? Is there a motion to extend? I'm sorry.
Next motion.
Mr. Smith, second. Mr. Long, it looks like. Saw a hand go up. Roll call vote for another 5 minutes.
Mr. Hess. Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Andy, we can't hear him.
Dog's barking.
Mrs. Polk.
Yes.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo. Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. This is Larry Sheffer about ZBA 1915.
Hello.
Is this Mr. Sheffer?
Yes, it is.
You have the floor for public comment, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. I've got a question for you.
Sorry, sir, we don't answer questions at public comment. I apologize.
Okay,
It's
well
against
then let me put
procedure.
it this way. In the PZA meetings, we asked the board, when did they take the concern for health and safety of the citizens into account for their decisions? And they told us they don't take into account any citizen's health, safety, and well-being in their decisions. And what we need to know is who in government that's allowing this to happen is accountable. To this point, we've had none. And because of forms being filled out incorrectly, there's issues here, and the reality is this operation is so big that it needs to be cited by the Illinois EPA. It states that on the form that Mr. O'Connor filled out for a Ross registration, and nobody's holding him to this. We can prove that it's incorrectly filled out. And you folks have these forms as evidence to go back and look at. I just have a few that I would like to comment on. And Mr. O'Connor states that he's got 2 permits from the EPA, and he has none. What he has is a Ross registration form that's filled out incorrectly and incomplete. It does show that there's 10 dust generators, but there is no follow-up as to what equipment is going to control the fugitive dust from those. And because of that, it's a serious health problem. And nobody seems to want to address this. I had a visit the other day from a board member. Thankfully, she came out and wanted to see for herself, Mrs. Weber. We stood there for 15 minutes, watched one semi dump a load of dirt. There was so much dust that in 15 minutes, it still didn't clear out on a windy day. So if you can imagine 50 loads being dumped with no control, the health hazard that's going to make. If we look at the Ross permit and it was filled out correctly, Mr. O'Connor would have to do a few things to satisfy the requirements to get an air permit to do this operation. I feel it's critical that he be held to that, because if he was honest and filled out the form correctly, it would state that he has to do numerous pollution control projects to allow this to happen, and the Illinois EPA is part of that, and they give it a citing and they give it a thumbs up or a no. We haven't gone through that process, and it needs to be done. Getting back to the permits that he says he has, I want to go over. The first one states that on December 2nd, the Illinois EPA asked Mr. O'Connor for a compliance commitment acceptance for a violation notice. It basically states that he was in violation and he had to sign a form to agree to these standards. And I would like to know, this is not a permit, this is a violation notice. What was the violation? He says he has none, but yet he says he has 2 permits, and through FOIA, there are none on that property. This all needs to be taken into consideration because Mr. Skimmerhorn said that this would all be decided on facts. We've produced facts that nobody is taking into account. And at some point, somebody is going to be held accountable. We will see it one way or the other, because this affects our health. You can bury stuff and it goes away. You can dump water and whatever's in it and it can run away, drain away. The air, you can't do anything about it. We'll measure it, we'll prove it, and we'll put an end to it. If Mr. O'Connor could control the dust, maybe we wouldn't have such a big problem with this, but the reality is he can't. And you folks need to take that into consideration. Stop this whole thing before it gets out of hand and somebody spends a whole lot of money and gets put out of business. This should be in a zoned industrial site, not with 3 sides of it surrounded by homes with people in it. In closing, I just ask that the facts be considered by the county board to fully examine the operation and the facts regarding the amount of material handled. Let the state do the process. Let them go through the siting process. Let them have it monitored, do it the right way, and if it passes, great. That means he's clearing the air up and we can breathe it. The way this is going, he has had to do nothing. He's claiming he has permits, he has none. As a matter of fact, he has a violation from the Illinois EPA. He's not telling us what it is. I would like to know what it is. Maybe you guys should ask. I appreciate the time and allowing me to talk, and hopefully you'll do the right thing. Thank you.
All right. That was the end of that extension. What's the board's desire from this point forward? More public comment, or do you want to move into business?
Mr. Chairman, how many are left?
3.
Are they all on the same subject matter?
No, different subject matter than what you've already heard.
Motion to extend.
Mr. Seroy, is there a second?
Second, Miller.
Mr. Miller, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk. Mr. Snipes.
Are we motioning to extend all 3?
For all 3.
For 5 minutes?
Total. Well, it's till we get through these 3. That was what I was going to clarify. The motion is to get through all 3 of these.
Can my motion be to extend till you're finished with your stack, Mr. Wheeler?
Well, that was my understanding. Is that the second's understanding as well?
Yes.
Mr. Miller, was that your understanding to do all 3?
Yes, please.
Okay, because we're taking more time on roll call votes than actual public comment.
True.
All right.
Thank you. Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo,
Aye.
Mr. Featherling,
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Long,
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye.
I didn't hear my name.
Ms. Polk,
I didn't hear my name.
Motion carries. Julie McDonald, is who we're calling now.
Hello, this is Julia.
Hi, Julie. It's Andy Wheeler. You have the floor for public comment.
Okay, great. Hold on 1 second. Great. Okay, my story or my comment is related to the Jerome Combs Detention Center. Johannes Favi is a man who shared his story on May 13th, 2020 with the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on the Judiciary Subcommittee on Immigration and Citizenship during its Democratic Virtual Roundtable on ICE's response to COVID. So that's where I got these words. And this is in his words, quote, "My name is Johannes Favi. I live in Indianapolis with my wife and our children. I am grateful to have the chance to be with them because only weeks ago, I was in immigration detention in a county jail in Kankakee, Illinois. I was detained there for almost 1 year while my wife and I waited for the government to process the petition she filed for my green card. While I was detained, my wife gave birth to our second child and our family lost our home. I met our new baby in a picture by mail. I saw a man who was detained with me hang himself who tried to commit suicide. I feel traumatized still today from all that I saw. In June 2019, immigration officers arrested me at the courthouse in Indiana when I appeared in connection with an old case from 2015. That case is the only time I have ever been arrested, and I paid a heavy price when I accepted a plea bargain and spent months in jail. However, because of that old conviction, I was in immigration detention for nearly a year with no bond hearing and without the possibility to see the sun or breathe fresh air. I spent night after night thinking about it, and I read about the law in the library, and I came to understand why I was disqualified from bond. It is wrong. It made me feel the system was rigged against me from the start, just like in a casino." End quote. So board members, I'm just asking if this seems right to you. We also deported a U.S. veteran out of Jerome Combs a few years back, wondering if that seems right to anybody. I don't know everyone's story in the detention center. I have been able to learn some, like Johannes Favi, and also a restaurant owner and workers from Indiana last year, for example, were brought here after a raid on their restaurant. These were beloved community members and taxpayers. So I know there are stories like this and more of ICE locking people up without legal representation for simply not having the right kind of papers at the right time, lost in immigration limbo, thrown in a cell. ICE has become more and more aggressive over the years. So recently, I don't know if you guys have picked up on this, but they just announced a citizen academy in which citizens assist ICE in apprehending people. So can you imagine what this will mean? I don't want my county shaking hands with ICE. I don't want my county making money from imprisoning immigrants. This relationship with ICE is voluntary. It is optional, and we can get out of it. So I'm asking you, the board, to be just way more curious about this than you ever have been before. Can you please just ask more questions and not just to the sheriff? Ask what effects does this relationship with ICE have on our own communities of color? Ask your Latina and Latino friends, constituents, and your neighbors. What kind of message does our partnership with ICE send? And I've noticed that officials have been really enthusiastic lately about talking about racial unity these days, which is great. So the question is really, what kind of county do we want? I'll just end with a resource for those of you who are interested, and I encourage all of you to do your own research. There is a website, immigrantjustice.org, and among news pieces and interviews, there is also a special tab for Kankakee and other counties in the region under its Transparency Project. And you'll find a recent inspection there about our detention center. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Maya Hendricks from Moments.
Hello.
Ms. Hendricks, it's Andy Wheeler at the county. You have the floor for public comment.
Hello. My name is Maya Hendricks, and I'm from the city of Moments. Today I'm going to be speaking on the relationship between the Sheriff's Office and ICE and defunding the police. The relationship between the Sheriff's Office and ICE is inhumane, and it hinders our community in many different ways. We're making money off of detaining innocent people, and that money is given right back to the police department. 45% of our county's annual budget is used on law enforcement. Kankakee spends 29% of its budget on police, Bradley spends 36% of its budget, and Bourbonnais spends a whopping 47% on their police department. And these numbers are all gained from the county's website. These numbers are extremely high, and they only lead to the necessity of police reform. The goal here is to end the relationship with ICE in Kankakee County, and it's to demilitarize the nation and to give back to our communities. With the funds that we can gain for our communities from defunding the police, and we can fight poverty and homelessness, which are factors that contribute to crime. We can focus on the mental health of people in our communities, and we could provide better education opportunities and establish youth services, which we lack highly here. A lot of our youth are being forgotten about, and that's something that's unacceptable. We can also diversify the police force and introduce cultural awareness. There aren't very many diverse officers throughout the county of Kankakee. And also, I'm voicing my support for the county-wide initiative for the 8 Can't Wait police reform principles. I know the NAACP is meeting about this with different police committees, but I think it's important that the county board gets behind that initiative as well. There are many things going on here with our relationships with ICE that just hinder our community completely, and a lot of us activists here in the community are going to continue to fight for that relationship. As you guys heard a story earlier, there are many other stories regarding innocent people and people who actually give to our communities and are successful business owners that we are locking away and profiting off of. So I hope that you guys can think about this and educate yourself about these numbers. I know the statistics are available, but those numbers aren't widely known. So I'm asking, just please educate yourself and to make the right decision. Thank you for your time.
All right, moving on is finally is Leslie Quezada from Kankakee. Just a second.
Hello?
Hi, is this Leslie?
Yes.
Hi, this is Andy Wheeler at the county board. You have the floor for public comment.
Oh, okay, thank you. Good morning, county board members. My name is Leslie. I am 21 and I am a dreamer, otherwise known as a DACA recipient. I immigrated here at the age of 2. Besides my parents wanting a better life for me, they were encouraged to come to this country because of the demand for cheap labor, like many other immigrants, and now they're being punished for it. At 2 years old, I've experienced extreme hunger and poverty, but don't get me wrong, I am so thankful to have experienced such hardships so young because it has made me the strong woman I am today. Being undocumented comes with a lot of shame, and it is not easy for me to talk about these things at all. But I have the God-given courage today to do so. It is absolutely heartbreaking to see my people being criminalized over documentation, when in fact immigrants commit crimes at a far lower rate than native-born Americans. Many immigrants being held at their own home are treated much, much worse than actual criminals. The federal government argues that they are entitled to less human rights than the rest of us, and that is unacceptable. It's punitive and inhumane. Our immigration system is over 100 years old, and we're seeing families being separated, children are going missing, and worst of all, they're being sexually abused. This system is broken badly, and the only people who really understand how bad are the ones without a say, without a voice. Our immigration laws are doing more harm than good, so maybe it's time our country revise them. I'm sure you are all aware that we need change at the national level, but that does not mean we can't start locally. I am one of the lucky ones. I have protection through DACA, and one thing I've learned is that when you're lucky, it is your responsibility to be a voice to those who don't have one. It is my responsibility to speak up when I see something wrong, and that's exactly why I'm speaking today. I don't mean to offend the board, but you are all complicit in the atrocities that are happening at your own homes. So I urge you to take a stand. Do not hold people with non-criminal backgrounds in detention centers, and keep ICE out of our courthouse. County Board, I am asking you to take action now, because people are suffering. I've turned my ear into action, and I will personally not stop applying pressure until we start seeing some change here in Kankakee. If that means that I have to encourage people not to vote for your re-election, I will. That is a promise. Again, it is not my intention to offend any of you, but I will not apologize for speaking up. Someone has to. I'm unafraid, undocumented, and unapologetic. Thank you so much for your time. Everybody have a good day. Thank you.
Alrighty, moving on to vacancy appointments. Is there a motion to push this to the last item of the meeting? Sorry.
Table it, maybe?
Table? Yeah, no, I'm just kidding.
Mr. Chairman, I would move.
Hold on just a minute, Mr. Snipes. Let me turn you on.
Mr. Chairman, I would move for the appointment of Stephen J. Hunter to fill the unexpired term of George Washington Jr. For the Kankakee County Board, District 17.
Is there a second from the board on that motion? I heard one. Who was the second?
Eckhoff.
Colt Eckhoff is the second on that. Is there any questions the board has for the potential member of the board? He has been duly
I've been vetted, I think.
Yeah, I think you've been vetted already. Yes, we do have the proper paperwork in order, so I guess we'll go with a roll call vote.
Mr. Hess. Mr. Tholen. Can you hear me now?
Whew.
Mrs. Polk?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Aye.
Mr. Byrne?
Aye.
Mr. Seroy? Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mrs. Weber?
Aye.
Mrs. Peters?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Mrs. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar?
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Zenz?
Aye.
Ms. Haas?
Aye.
Mr. Carrico?
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye. Motion carries. Congratulations, and I guess if you, we have Judge Monty Drew here to swear in Mr. Hunter. Yeah. Oh.
Okay.
If you could you step up to the mic, please, so they can hear us at home?
Me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Pull up a little bit to the mic.
You're going to put your papers down because you're going to repeat after me.
Okay, I was gonna say the same thing that you were, okay.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, say your name,
I, Stephen J. Hunter,
having been appointed
having been appointed
to the office of
to the office of
County Board Member,
County Board Member,
District 17,
District 17,
and for the County of
and
Kankakee
for the County of Kankakee,
and the State of Illinois,
and the State of Illinois,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
or affirm
or affirm
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of
and the
Illinois,
Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully
that I will faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of the office of
of the office of
County Board Member,
County Board Member,
District 17,
District 17,
to the best of my
to the
ability.
best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. If I might take a point of personal privilege, let me just thank everybody who has shown up here today, and thank God we did not. Jerry, don't leave yet, because I want to thank you. You got me in this ball game. But I'm really glad that they didn't put this appointment at the bottom of the agendas. So, thank God we don't have any other public comments. But let me just say thank you very much for being here, taking time out of your busy schedules. I'd like to thank the county board members for affirming me. Also, Judge Drew, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. Additionally, Jerry Sudduth, who is the Democratic County Chairman, along with Senator Joyce, as well as Sam Payton and Commissioner Robert Snipes, and along with the chairman, I guess kind of pushed me to taking this position, because I was looking for some other folks and I was turned down, and the senator says it's a perfect fit, Hunter, so you might as well take it. So people have some concerns as to how I got here. Look at Jerry and the senator and the other folks that I just mentioned, but I look forward to filling the shoes of George Washington. Those are big shoes, but I do bring a wealth of experience in public service, having served on the Kankakee City Council for 40 years and having worked for the state of Illinois for 39 years too. And you have some, rock stars here already that I've been working with in county government. When you think in terms of Sheriff Downey, worked with him as well too. State's attorney, everybody knows Jim Rowe. I've worked with him as well too. Also Bob Gessner, the coroner. I've worked with him for a long time, dating back to the city of Kankakee. Another rock star, Lori Gadboys, your recorder. And I say rock stars because they provide wonderful services to the people of Kankakee County, in excess of 100,000 people. Also have worked with Dan Hendrickson, your county clerk, for many years as well too. He's been in that particular office for some time, and when he was not elected county clerk, I worked with him as well too. I have a relationship with the treasurer, and I look forward to working with Jake Lee. But all of you, I just really like to just thank you again for having the faith in me, and all of you who've shown up here early this morning. I appreciate it. You have interface with me in all facets of my life and political career. Some of you I've grew up with and worked with in various things and capacities, and I just want to thank everybody again. The chairman of the board has been really diligent in terms of providing me with an orientation and expediting the paperwork and giving me some information as to what some of the roles and responsibilities would be. But anyway, again, I just want to thank everybody. I look forward to working with you, and I'm glad to see some of my family members are here this morning as well too. But I look forward to promoting the health, safety, and welfare of all the citizens, and I look forward to working with everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Take a quick break while folks exit the room. I'm going to go ahead and read through the certificates of appreciation. Since we've been dealing with COVID, we haven't had people in person. We've been saving these, and since it won't be in person for a little while for all of these department heads and their employees, I'm going to read a rather lengthy list. And all these folks have received the finest certificate of appreciation that money could buy via interoffice mail. So we appreciate all their service. First up is Sheriff Mike Downey, 35 years with the county. Grace Segerbruck, 30 years in the probation department. Thank you both for your long-lasting service. 25 years, Sheriff's Department, Eric Davis and Teresa Laney. Probation Department, Christine Yonke and Tom Latham. The Planning Department, Michelle Sadler. And Circuit Clerk Office, Paula Spalding. All of those are 25 years. Congratulations. 20 years we have in the Sheriff's Department, Andrew Baston, Scott Allen, Grant Van Vorst, and Craig Horstman. In Corrections, Amanda Apel, Misty Bright, and I apologize, Amanda. I'm sure I'll hear about that later. Public Defender's Office, Karen Farmer, 20 years, and thank you all for your service. 15 years at the Sheriff's Department, Robin Hassenberg, Troy Martin, and Jana King. Corrections, Donald Anderson, Robert Bartucci, Leland Dyer, Sonia Hansen, Loretta Harris, Charles Hertz, Justin Lesage, Scott Owens, Kimberly Perkins, Lisa Taylor, Manuel Villaforte, and Loy White. And that's 15 years. In 10 years at the Sheriff's Department, William George F. In the Finance Department, Chris Kerner. Circuit Clerk's Office, Nicole Nunn and Alice Hartman. And the Assessor's Office, Kimberly Scanlon. So that was a long list. Sorry that it took so long. We were trying to wait this out, and there is no waiting COVID out. It looks like we're going to be dealing with this for a while. Alrighty. Did you get an answer? Oh, no, there he is. Sorry. I was making sure that our special guest was here today. So I understand. I need a motion to go into executive session per litigation 5 ILCS 120/2C11. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman.
So moved.
There, seconds.
All right, I'll go with Sam with the motion, Peyton, and Mr. Lear second. That'll be a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk. Mr. Snipes.
Okay, those are the three. Yeah.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy. Mr. Lear. Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker. Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo,
Aye.
Mr. Featherling,
Aye.
Mr. Donnell,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
That's the only
Aye.
Mr. Long,
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra,
Aye.
Mr. Hunter,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. If I could ask before everybody, we're going to stop the tape. We are going to go into executive session. I need anybody who's not a county board member, which from what I can tell, it's Mr. Session. I believe everybody is still present. Inviting some people back into the meeting that were outside of it. We're waiting. The next thing on the agenda is a presentation from the state's attorney's office, and once we get Nancy and Jim in here, they have some things that they wanted to talk about regarding OMA and things like that. So
Meetings this usually this long?
No. Good question, though.
Are we?
It's called an initiation ceremony.
Evidently.
Jason, are we live?
We're live, guys. We're on the air. Set. Alrighty, I tell you what, is it okay if we go through some business while we're waiting for the state's attorney to come back in? Then we'll go back to them?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Under minutes of the last meeting from June 9th, 2020, is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
We'll go with Mr. Snipes, Ms. Parker with a second. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess,
Aye.
Mr. Tholen, Mrs. Polk, Mr. Snipes,
Aye.
Mr. Byrne,
Aye.
Mr. Seroy, Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mrs. Weber,
Aye.
Mrs. Weber, Mrs. Peters,
Aye.
Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Mrs. Parker,
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield,
Aye.
Mr. Zenz,
Aye.
Ms. Haas,
Aye.
Mr. Carrico, Mr. Eckhoff,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo,
Aye.
Mr. Featherling, Mr. Donnell,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Long,
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra,
out Patricia Polk again. Second time.
Mrs. Polk.
Yeah, she left me out twice.
I'm sorry. She's keeping score.
Are you voting aye on the minutes, Mrs. Polk?
Yeah. Aye.
Mr. Hunter,
I'll have to abstain. I had no standing.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Do we have Mr. Rowe and Ms. Nicholson on the call yet?
Okay.
They're not on? All right, moving on to Claims Committee reports. This is April 2020 and May 2020. Is there a motion to combine and approve? Is that Mr. Smith and Mr. Long, I believe? Roll call vote, please.
Let me read the amounts into the record.
Okay.
Total claims for the month of April 2020 and May 2020. Your Committee on Highway Claims would beg leave to report they've examined the following claims presented and recommend payment. The clerk is hereby authorized and directed to issue orders to the several claimants payable out of the funds as follows. Highway Fund, $1,312,800. General Fund, $2,226,134. Special Fund, $7,084,890. Total claims of $10,623,824. Roll call.
Please. Thank you.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes. Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy. Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz. Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Nancy is here. Yeah, sorry about that. We sent you the link. Todd, are you here?
Andy, your mic.
Todd Seroy, are you on the call still? He's not on the call.
Okay.
Alrighty, we're going to go back to the presentation from the state's attorney's office. Nancy's here to kind of share some information. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Wheeler and Anita Speckman asked that I come and just kind of talk about, now that we've entered into phase 4, and then with the Bailey lawsuit, discussing about the requiring of wearing masks in the county building. So first of all, the county board, it is their duty, and they have the care and custody of the county building, so they can make the decision of whether or not to have masks in the building, or, you know, different safety measures for the building. Excuse me. So part of the concern has been the Bailey case. You know, that's when Representative Bailey filed the lawsuit down in Clay County, Illinois, which is in the 4th Judicial Circuit. We are in the 21st Judicial Circuit, so there is some question as to whether or not that order actually applies here or has jurisdiction over us, because we are in a different jurisdiction. There was a finding, Representative Bailey asked, and the judge did say that it applied to all residents of Illinois. There is some uncertainty, though, if that is true, because once again, it's in a different judicial circuit than we are. So while it's not binding on us, it could have some persuasion on our courts here. What else lends to the confusion is just that morning, the federal court had sided with Pritzker and said that he was within his rights that he did not exceed his authority with his executive orders when they were deciding about whether or not to allow certain amounts of people to gather. So there's been different rulings both on the state level and on the federal level. There's been no deciding. The Illinois Supreme Court has not ruled in on it. We've really not had any set ruling in the state. So there's still a little bit of uncertainty. So even if we were to take the judge down in the Clay County's order, he said that he felt that the Illinois Department of Public Health was the supreme authority on whether or not to close businesses and how to deal with the residents in these public health crises. So no matter if we look at the governor's executive orders or we look at IDPH, which looks at the CDC, they are saying we should wear masks if we can't socially distance in public. So, you know, the CDC recommends wearing face coverings or masks when you can't social distance. And then IDPH on June 26th of 20 is the last time they updated their website. But in that particular case, they said if everyone over the age of 2 who can medically tolerate a face covering over their nose and mouth must wear one in public place when unable to maintain a safe distance 6 feet from others. So that would qualify for this building. So if you decide to require masks, that is appropriate. The Bailey case, and you know, that has no bearing on whether or not you decide to do that here. So you can require to do masks, wear masks here, and you can do temperature screenings because that is a screening. And when you're doing a screening, you can't be discriminatory. So for example, I'm of Asian descent, and since, you know, there's some, you know, the COVID that, you know, originated in China, you can't say, oh, she's Asian, obviously we have to screen her, because that's discriminatory. So it's easier just to screen everybody as they come into the building. As we've stated before, we are not prosecuting. There's no criminal charges. There's no mechanism for criminal charges or fines for not wearing a mask. However, if people would enter the building, they'd be asked to wear a mask, and they would become like a destructive, like destroy property or refuse to leave or become argumentative or physically assault somebody. Obviously, if there's a criminal action that stems from that, that still would be prosecuted. So like if Mr. Hendrickson, you know, somebody comes to the county clerk's, you know, counter and he asks them to wear a mask and they refuse to leave and then start destroying property, that we would deal with because that would actually be a criminal action. But at this time, there's no prosecution or fines for not wearing a mask and not complying. But the county board can require masks in the county administration building.
So the question had come from some board members and others, you know, now, you know, is it the Wild West? Everything's open, you know, because of that court case. And I thought it was good that you heard from a lawyer that's saying not so fast.
Right, it's not determined. We don't know at this point. I mean, obviously, it's a court ruling. We're not saying that, but the Fourth Circuit is not our court of original jurisdiction. And what that means is, at this point, I can't go appeal that case because it's not my court of original jurisdiction. And for example, if a car accident would happen here in Kankakee County by 2 Kankakee County residents, I wouldn't file a case down in the Fourth Circuit because that wouldn't have jurisdiction because the event didn't happen here and the people didn't, you know, weren't down there. It does have some weight because it is a judge who made a ruling of a competent jurisdiction. But it's still not been determined. Once the Illinois Supreme Court weighs in, or for us, the 21st Circuit or the 3rd District Appellate Court, you know, then that, yeah, would have definitely more weight on what we do. But at this time, there's not been anything.
Okay. Any questions for Nancy on that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Janice.
Okay. Has anybody brought it to the Illinois Supreme Court to be weighed in on? And also the governor had been asking for a change of venue, so that kind of throws out the jurisdictional aspect of that. And the judge ruled on the entire order, the executive order, and threw it out. And the executive order was statewide. So that's, I guess, my questions on why it wouldn't be statewide.
Because the 21st, we're in a different circuit, that's a Fourth Circuit. Also, the issue too is that court case was brought while we were in phase 2 and phase 3 of the governor's executive order. There were different restrictions at the time that were being ruled on. So there have even been some legal, some lawyers and some different legal experts that have weighed in to say that conditions now have even changed, that a similar lawsuit brought now that we're under phase 4 might even be different, because the issue has to do with the restriction of, businesses and an economy. Even if you were to take the judge down in Clay County in the Fourth Circuit's ruling, he said Illinois Department of Public Health would then be the determining factor, or would be the entity in charge of deciding how we proceed for the health and safety of Illinois. And at this time, IDPH says that if you can't socially distance in public, you should wear a mask. So either taking it either way you want to at this time, the question of whether or not you can require masks in the county building would be yes, you can.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. Moving on. Under department reports.
To the Honorable County Board of Kankakee County, the County Collector's Monthly Report for May 2020. Total cash and bank and investments of $379,175.08. County Treasurer's Monthly Report for May 2020. Total cash and investments $379,175.08. Coroner's Monthly Report for May 2020. Total calls 136, coroner's cases 23, autopsies 10, toxicology 10, donations 1, indigents 1, 4 fetal, 64 hospice, 45 referrals, 77 cremations, and 5 pending. Total income for the coroner for May 2020, total of $7,490.22. Circuit Clerk cash book for month ending May 2020, total dispersed $249,861.55. Recorder's Monthly Report for May 2020, disbursement fees paid to the County Treasurer, $135,447.64. County Clerk's Monthly Report for May 2020, total $24,174.03. Animal Control Monthly Report for May 2020. Total fees or total revenue of $18,162.25. The IPTIP Building Fund $164.40. Total animals handled 59. Monthly Building Division Report for May 2020. 94 permits, total permits. Fees of $33,927, total extra fees of $3,974 for a total of $37,901. The monthly resolution list for July 2020, total of the county $15,736.90.
Is there a motion to combine and approve? Mr. Kirkstra, a second. Mr. Long.
Second.
That we had Mr. Kirkstra and Mr. Long. That'll be a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye. Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber. Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield. Mr. Zenz. Ms. Haas. Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo. Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Committee presentations, or excuse me, anything removed from the consent agenda? We have a few items there. Does anybody want something removed and discussed separately? Second time. Then I'll take a motion to combine and approve the consent agenda as presented.
I make that motion.
Mr. Featherling, and a second for Mr. Tholen. If we could read those in the record, please. Thank you.
Sure. The appointment of Craig Long to the Kankakee County GIS Committee. The reappointment of Dwayne Hull to the Otto Township Fire Protection District. The reappointment of Paul A. Mao to the Cabery Area Fire Protection District. Resolution for the selection of election judges. Amended schedule for holidays to be observed by the offices of Kankakee County for calendar year 2020. Resolution and disposal of surplus and unwanted vehicles for the Kankakee County Sheriff's Department.
All righty. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
I did.
Aye.
Mr. Lear. Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Zenz? Ms. Haas? Mr. Carrico?
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo? Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on, ZBA case 19-15. I'll just read the title into the record. Special use permit number 24D, heavy processing facility in the A1 Ag District, section 05, Limestone Township. Is there a motion to approve on this one?
I make that motion.
I have Miss Dunbar with the motion, Mr. Featherling with the second.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess Dell, you've got the floor if you want to do any intro to this discussion.
Okay. All right. Let me share my screen with you here. It says it's disabled.
Should be good now.
There we go. PowerPoint slideshow should be this one. Share. Okay, you should see a black screen right now. Still seeing a black screen. Do you see a screen?
It's just a blank screen.
Okay, then I'm on the wrong one.
Are you able to see the names on there? Is Jackie Haas and Mike Zen still on? Okay.
That's not working. How do I disable the screen? Oh, there it is. Okay, page down. How's that?
All right.
There we go.
Is that working? Okay. All right, this is a request for a special use permit for a heavy processing facility in the A1 district. It is not a rezoning. I've heard several times throughout the process that it is rezoning. There is no change in zoning. It's just a special use permit. It's for the recycling of used concrete, which is crushed into gravel, and the rebar is removed from it. They also recycle soil and clay from construction sites. Those materials are screened to remove rocks and other foreign materials that might be in. The facility has been operating for a few years at least without a special use permit. Property is 33.85 acres in size. It's on the west side of Van Siding Road, about a quarter mile or so south of Route 17. and the recycling operation occurs at the rear of the property. There's a large 19,000 plus square foot barn on the front of the property. The property has several buses on it. These are charter buses, and we have told the owner those must be removed. Whether the special use permit is granted or not, they cannot be there. There's several shipping containers on the property, and bees and pumpkins are also raised on the property. Here's a aerial photo of the property. The 35 acres is outlined in the red. The large pole barn was not on the aerial photo when the photo was taken. It is outlined in green. The recycling operation is towards the rear of the property, highlighted with the orange circle on it towards the rear. It may go a little bit larger than that circle, but that is the general location of the recycling operation. Also on here, I've located the nearest house to that operation, and that is the one on the south side. It's about 1,600 plus or minus feet from the operation. We've had multiple hearings on this case, starting at December 9th. There was a public hearing. ZBA voted 3-3 and made no recommendation. December 18th, Planning and Zoning Committee sent it back to the Zoning Board for more deliberation. January 13th, there was a public hearing, but it was continued because we had a lack of a quorum, I believe was the issue there. And on March 9th, we had the final public hearing, and ZBA voted again 3-3 for approval, and no recommendation was made because of that. As you may or may not know, you need 4 concurring votes from the Zoning Board for them to make a recommendation. During the course of the public hearings, there were several objectors, mostly adjoining property owners or owners in close proximity. Their names are on the screen there. And all of this is in the transcripts of the meetings, which are part of your packet. Then on June 17th, Planning and Zoning Committee voted to recommend the approval of the special use permit and approve findings of fact, and recommended, along with those findings, 7 conditions be placed on the approval. The vote for that was 8-6. So I'm going to concentrate now on those findings that were recommended by the Planning and Zoning Committee. Finding number 1 is one of the standards that needs to be met, and that is that the establishment, maintenance, or operation of the special use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. Planning and Zoning Committee found that after careful review of the evidence and testimony provided, that a preponderance of the evidence indicates that the use will not be detrimental to the health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare of the public at large. However, the same evidence indicates that property owners in the immediate vicinity of the operation may be affected by dust emanating from trucks entering and leaving the facility. The board shall apply the following conditions upon approval of the special use permit to alleviate this situation. So the Planning and Zoning Committee did recognize that there could be issues, and they've placed conditions on it to alleviate those issues. Number 1, the operation must maintain all required permits from the IEPA, Kankakee County, and other agencies at all times, including a valid ROS permit, and must comply with all directives issued by the IEPA, which has jurisdiction over dust. Number 2, the processing and storage of materials is limited to the rear 1,000 feet of the property, and the storage of materials would be allowed in the rear 1,500 feet of the property. I believe that's designed to keep the operation as far away from any homes as possible. Finding number 2, that the special use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of the property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor substantially diminish and impair property values within the neighborhood. PZA found that the subject property and the area surrounding the subject property is zoned A1 agriculture. The board finds that the operation's distance from adjacent homes, coupled with the fact that the property is nearly surrounded with mature trees and agricultural fields, that the enjoyment of adjoining properties is not unduly injured, provided that hours of operations are limited. In addition, the board finds that no evidence or testimony has been presented to indicate property values will be impaired within the neighborhood. PZA put the following conditions on this finding. 1, the hours of operation for processing and shipping and receiving at the facility shall be Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Saturday from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Number 2, limits what can be done there. Only use concrete, brick, rock, uncontaminated soils, clay, or similar materials in accordance with the ordinance related to the special use permit shall be accepted at the facility for processing. So you can only accept what's on that list or something very similar to it. Number 3, open burning shall only be permitted on the rear 1,500 feet of the property. Currently, but state law allows you to open burn landscape waste on your property that has been generated from your property. This would limit him to, even though he has a legal right to do so, this condition would limit him to the rear 1,500 feet of the property, again, keeping it as far away from his neighbors' homes as possible. And 4, a speed limit of 10 miles per hour shall be imposed on all vehicles operating on the property, and signage will be placed along the driveway indicating the speed limit. That is designed to keep any dust down that would emanate from trucks entering and leaving the property. Number 3, that the establishment of the special use will not substantially impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding property for uses permitted in the district. PZA found that the subject property and the area surrounding the subject property is zoned A1 agriculture. The board further found that the development of surrounding properties for agricultural purposes and uses permitted within the agricultural district will not be impeded by the establishment of the special use permit. No conditions were placed on this finding. Number 4, the adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, or necessary facilities have been or will be provided. PZA found that all utilities needed to operate the facility have been provided, and that an access road or driveway has been provided to access the rear of the property. The board further found that there are no identified drainage issues on the property. However, the property may have been elevated over time through the use of fill, which may have caused an adverse effect on the drainage of the area in general. The board also finds that all necessary public facilities have been or will be provided. And the following conditions have been applied to this finding. The property owner shall cause a drainage study of the property to be conducted at their expense to evaluate the effects that elevating the property has had on the surrounding neighborhood. This study shall be completed within 24 months of approval of the special use, and any improvements or changes to drainage shall be completed within 24 months of the date of the completed study at the owner's expense. Once the drainage study is completed, the county planner may hire a third-party reviewer to review the study for compliance with proper engineering practices. If this review is required, said review will be at the expense of the owner as well. Basically, that is forcing the applicant to do what should have been done in the first place, is get a stormwater permit and have a study done before the property is elevated. So if any issues are found based on that study, then they would need to be corrected. Number 5, that adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide ingress and egress so designed as to minimize traffic congestion in the public streets. The board found that the owner has provided a 33-foot entrance at Van Siding Road to accommodate truck movement into the facility, and that an access road has been established on the property. The board also finds that the access road has been paved for the first 400 feet and that Bitmax dust control is used on the remainder of the access road. The board further finds that the Township Road Commissioner has provided a written statement in the form of a letter indicating that truck traffic to and from the facility has not been an issue for the road network. There's no conditions on that one as well. And number 6, the final finding, that the special use will in all other respects conform to the applicable regulations of the district in which it is located, except as such regulations may in each instance be modified by the board. PZA found that the applicant is not seeking any variation to the county zoning regulations in regard to this request. Yeah, I know one of the public commenters mentioned a variance. There are no variances associated with this. The board further finds that the special use permit will comply with all aspects of the county zoning ordinance and all conditions are placed upon the special use permit. The board also finds that the conditions placed on the special use permit will require the special use permit be in compliance with regulations beyond those imposed by the zoning ordinance, such as IEPA permitting. And that is the findings. All of the evidence provided on this case was submitted to all of you in your packets. So I think at this time, with the chairman's permission, I would entertain questions on the findings or any of that evidence.
All right, do you want to stop sharing your screen? Or wait a minute, let's leave it up for a minute because you may need to reference a map. Is there any questions for Del?
Questions appropriate at this time, or can
Yes,
I
sir.
submit
Yeah,
it?
Mr. Smith?
Mr. Chairman, or in general, after reading through a bunch of this stuff, I've got a couple amendments I would like to make to this final presentation, Del.
The conditions, is that what you're?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion's already made.
Pardon?
He can't amend the motion. If he chooses, he would need a second, and then the board would have to vote on that amendment.
Okay,
So,
thank
Mr. Smith, what's your suggestion?
Well, what I would suggest is amending under section 2, 1, subsection, the Saturday operations be eliminated as was recommended in the first revision or version of this. In reading through all the testimony, I find that Mr. O'Connor's trying to do the right things, but his misting operation for the grinding itself does not work yet. And that I would also include that be required to be operational to do any grinding. My rationale behind that is I've personally sat out there on Irwin Road and watched the dust clouds on 2 different days drift towards these houses. And that was backed up also by Dr. Foster's comments earlier today about dust in the pools.
I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, what did you say needed to be done?
The mister that Mr. O'Connor testified that.
Oh, a mister?
Yeah. Water source be put on the grinding itself to eliminate or reduce the dust. That for these operations to occur, that needs to be functional.
So if I could summarize, it's no Saturday operations, and there needs to be a functional dust control system, whatever that may be, on the crusher itself.
On the crusher itself, as per his testimony.
So is there a second to Mr. Smith's amendment to this?
I'll second it.
Second.
All right, and that's, I'll go with Mr. Kinzinger. I think you were first on this one. Second. So, all right, any discussion about the amendments solely? Just a moment, please. Let me turn you on.
Yeah. I had listened to the comments as you all did in public speak out, and I'm I guess looking at the 7 conditions and the ones that you're adding, I believe this should take care of the concerns of some of the individuals that were living in the area regarding the public comments. I was looking to Dale to see if did he get the same feel that this kind of adequately covers those arguments or their concerns, excuse me.
Was that directed at me? You kept cutting out there.
Yes, I was looking at with the revision, in addition to the amendment of 1, and the adding, I believe, of 1, which now makes it 8 conditions. Given the public comments, does this
well, the hours of operation of the facility is that's up to the board. If you feel that the neighbors would be limiting their hours further and removing Saturdays would eliminate issues with the neighbors, then by all means that is appropriate to do so. And The elimination of dust or any possibility of dust at the facility would also be appropriate. So adding a functional dust suppression system to the crusher would also be appropriate if the board would like to do so.
Okay, and then to Mr. Who was the one that initiated the motion?
Smith.
Mr. Smith. Now you chose Saturday. You didn't say Saturday and Sunday. Is there a reason just for Saturday?
The primary reason is, in my discussions with people from that area, they want some respite. They want to be able to enjoy their property themselves. This is a commercial operation that he's wanting to run out there. Monday through Friday seems to be a compromise to the other property owners out in that area. And if you read, and I'm sure you did, read through all the material given to us, the first proposal had that eliminated. It was just Monday through Friday.
Okay, that's no problem. Thanks.
You're welcome, sir.
Any other comments, excuse me, just on the amendment that Mr. Smith has brought forward? From the board, okay. Well, I guess my only comment is I'm absolutely in agreement with the dust suppression system, but dictating no operations on Saturday, I think is an unnecessary impediment to the business model. So I'm going to be voting against it just because of that, but that's just my explanation of why.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Is there any reason to limit the Saturday and Sunday, to limit the use on Saturday and Sunday?
Well, Sunday was already not open for business. That wasn't in the original motion. That was a given. So Saturday is just eliminating it. I don't think that's going to do anything for the neighbors. I don't think this is going to appease them at all based on their statements. So I think it's an unnecessary restriction that we're doing, and that doesn't help the overall feeling of the neighborhood. That's my own opinion. Again, the dust suppression thing, I think it's a absolutely valid thought. So that's where I'm at. That's why I won't support this amendment as it is. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Lear.
I think procedurally it would be appropriate to either request or to treat these as two separate amendments.
Does the person who made the motion accept that, or do you want them as a package?
I have no problem with that, Mr. Chairman.
The second, Mr. Kinzinger?
I have a problem. I need another second.
You want them both together?
Yes.
Because both have to agree, Mr. Smith, so these are voted on together.
That's fine.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this? All righty then, I guess we'll do a roll call vote on the amendments. I'm
Mr.
sorry?
Chairman?
Yes.
You asked for any extra thoughts. We're voting on an amendment, and then we'll vote on the actual ZBA case. Maybe it should be sent back so that there can be more discussion from the neighbors after these. I'd like to hear what they would say after hearing these amendments, and that if we vote on it today, it's not going to give them that opportunity.
And that could come up as with another amendment that comes after this we're discussing right now. So if the board feels that they want to send it back after we're done with the current business in front of us, then we can do that.
All right.
So is there any other comments about the current amendments that we're proposing to insert into the final proposal?
Just one from me. I kind of concur with Andy. I will go for the suppression of the dust, but I think it's a stretch going with the Saturday since Sunday is already in place, because their argument was the dust suppression. I didn't hear anything about the Saturday being an issue, so I would just vote no for that reason, and I guess we have to deal with an amendment when we come back to the original, unless this passes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Smith.
I do believe that during the testimony today, they were talking about the excessive amount of truck traffic out there. Again, this is just some release.
And I do remember hearing that, but unfortunately today is not testimony. That was public comment. The testimony was during PZA and ZBA. That's the only evidence that we're allowed to consider. If you made a trip out there and they said something about truck traffic, that would be ex parte communication that should have been revealed to the board in PZA. I'm not saying you did anything wrong, but there's evidence that was considered that the whole board is not considering. That becomes a problem on legal cases.
I would argue that point, Mr. Chairman, in reading the transcripts before the ZBA. I believe it was Mr. Chafer in particular commented on the amount of truck traffic out there.
I believe the testimony was about 20 trucks a day. It could ramp up if they had a large project going on, and certainly some days it is less, but average is about 20 trucks a day was the testimony.
And that was specifically on Saturdays? Was the discussion on Saturdays?
On Saturday, I don't know that they differentiated any particular.
I didn't see any differentiation. That's kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't say anything. It just talks about the 25 tanker trucks delivers the water to the property, but it doesn't say anything about the day.
Correct.
So are we voting on that we're also going to eliminate Saturday work? That no trucks will be in operation on Saturday? Is that part of this amendment?
That's dust suppression, yes, and that. Yeah,
Not only
this
trucks,
amendment
but
is
the
those two
crusher
things.
itself.
Yep.
Operations period.
Right.
Not in agreement.
It's not open.
Not in agreement with that.
So are we ready to vote on the amendment?
Yes.
Aye means you want the two amendments. No means you don't want the two amendments, or you would like to consider another amendment. So.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Mr. Tholen.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Nay.
Mr. Byrne.
Nay.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
See you later.
Mr. Payton.
Sam? Mr. Payton, can you hear us? Or I think he might be frozen.
Yeah, I can now.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger. Aye.
Ron, was that an aye?
Aye.
Okay, it didn't come through. Thank you.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Nay.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson. Mr. Swanson.
Nay.
Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
No.
Mr. Wheeler.
Nay. The motion carries.
Motion carries.
The motion carries is to add those two amendments. We move back to the original case as presented with those amendments. Is there discussion on that? Do we have a motion to approve on the floor already on that? Is there any discussion on the full measure?
Carol Weber.
Yes, Carol.
After visiting the property and visiting with the neighbors and visiting with Mr. O'Connor, visiting with county board members nearby the property, everyone I've spoken with agreed that Mr. O'Connor's repurposing of the material is a very good idea and something that the county really needs. However, finding of fact number 2 of the PZA is that will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity. And thus, even though there was extensive stipulations presented about how to respond to findings, neighbors I've spoken with and heard about in the immediate area find this special use injurious to their use and enjoyment. And because this is my District 11, their representative and responsibility, I would need to vote responsibly negative to respond to their needs. Thank you.
All right. Is there any other comment?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Ray Fairfield?
Yes.
I have a question for Mr. Skimmerhorn, if I could.
Sure, Dell.
Dell, does Mr. O'Connor have a valid Ross permit or not? Or do you know?
I believe it is, yes. They've submitted one in the packet. It is in your packet.
Okay. I missed that then. Okay, I was just wanted to know. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just one.
Yes, sir.
Normally, you would I side on the part of on behalf of the property owners. So I listened attentively to their concerns. I believe that we addressed it was the dust issue that was the major concern, and so as a result, that's now been addressed in our amended motion, even to and including the weekends. However, I also took note that what is the name of the individual who of the property owner, that he stated that no one had talked to them, he has a good relationship with them, and they had not brought that to his concern about the dust into the pool. So I believe in this case I have to vote yes, given that we've placed 7 conditions and now possibly 8, the 8th one into the conditions, and then we amended one to include Saturday. I'm believing that should kind of resolve the issue, along with all of the other safeguards that's in place. So generally, yes, I support the property owners. However, listening to them, I believe that these amendments have been addressed. I mean, these conditions have been addressed. And so therefore, I don't believe that now we should restrict him from, this special use permit. That's just my opinion.
Anyone else?
What are your sentiments, Chair?
Yes,
No,
yes, Mr. Chairman, Peters.
Let's go to Janice. I'll answer that. Ms. Peters, yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at, I think, 186 of 443, and they do talk about the truck traffic. They talk about the truck tankers coming in all hours, even in the middle of the night, and 25 to 30 trucks at a time. So I know you mentioned that maybe they didn't talk about the truck traffic, but I did find one instance, at least in that few minutes after you said that. I knew they talked about it at PZA, and here it is, at least one example of talking about the truck traffic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hunter, did you have something?
Yeah, I just, I'm of the same school of thought that you had with respect to, I think the additional mitigator of that spray thing or whatever on the machine. I supported that, but I didn't necessarily support the non-business on Saturday. So those are just my concerns regarding this entire matter. And I've read this particular information when I talked with the chairman a few days ago.
All right. Any other thoughts from the board before we have a roll call? Alrighty. All right, it seems like we're ready to go then. If we could get a roll call, please.
Mr. Hess.
Mr. Hess? Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Nay.
Mrs. Peters.
Nay.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Nay.
Mr. Fairfield.
Nay.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Nay.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill.
Nay.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Nay.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
No.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Motion carries. Moving on, ZBA case 20-02, rezoning from A1 Ag District to Rural Estate District and variance to section 121-286C1, driveway intervals in section 21 of Yellowhead Township. Del, do you have something on this, please?
I do.
While he's looking, can I get a motion on the floor, please?
So moved.
Make the motion.
Motion with Mr. Hess, second with Mr. Snipes. All right.
Okay, you should see a map on your screen?
Nope.
No.
Nope.
Okay, let's try that again. How about now?
Things are happening. There you go.
Okay, this is a rezoning from, let's see, A1 to rural estate on a 4-acre parcel being divided off of a 24-acre parcel in Yellowhead Township on 9000 North Road. The parcel is owned by Harry and Deborah Stenhouse owns the 24-acre parcel, and their son Jason and his wife currently live in a mobile home behind the house that you see on the end of that long driveway. They would like to have that mobile home removed and build their own house, but still stay within close proximity to the parents. So in order to do that, they'd like to divide 4 acres out of the farm and build a home on it. To accomplish that, the new parcel would have to be zoned rural estate, and since it has to have its own driveway, they would need a variance for driveway spacing. Zoning Board of Appeals met on June 8th and had a public hearing and recommends the approval of both the variance and the rezoning, 5-0. There were no objectors present, and PZA on the 17th also recommended the approval.
Alrighty, any discussion here? Hearing none, roll call vote on this one, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
I've been here.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo,
Aye.
Mr. Featherling,
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Long,
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra,
Aye.
Mr. Hunter,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on, ZBA case 20-03, rezoning from A1 Ag District to A2 Ag District, or Agricultural Estates District, in section 18 of the Yellowhead Township. Is there a motion on this before Dell starts going through the basics?
Had his leg out and off to accelerating. It's crazy.
I'm sorry?
Back off.
Eckhoff
I make
with the
that motion. Hello?
Eckhoff and then Featherling, second?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Alrighty, Dell?
All right, you ready? Okay, I'm gonna share my screen again. Share.
Where'd it go? Where'd it go?
There you go. See it?
Yep.
All right. This is a request by the owners, Michael and Ann Wyatt, and the applicant, Zachary Barton, who is purchasing the 10-acre parcel outlined in red. Mr. Barton would like to build a home, establish a home on the site so that he can move there. It's 10 acres. It's currently zoned A1 agriculture, and he's requesting rezoning to A2 agricultural estate. Had a public hearing on this also on June 8th. And zoning board recommends the approval 5-0. There were no objectors present, and then on the June 17th, Planning and Zoning Committee also recommended the approval.
Alrighty, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Roll call, Mr. Chairman.
Roll call has been called for.
Mr. Hess,
Aye.
Mr. Tholen,
Aye.
Mrs. Polk,
Aye.
Mr. Snipes,
Aye.
Mr. Byrne,
Aye.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mrs. Weber,
Aye.
Mrs. Peters,
Aye.
Mr. Payton,
Aye.
Mrs. Parker,
Aye.
Mrs. Parker, Ms. Dunbar,
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger,
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield,
Aye.
Mr. Carrico,
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye. Aye.
Was that an aye, Mr. Swanson? Okay. Ms. Zakulo,
Aye.
Mr. Featherling,
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Long,
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra,
Aye.
Mr. Hunter,
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on. Riverside Country Estates Subdivision, 3rd Edition, final plat. Is there a motion to approve that?
I make that motion.
Mr. Featherling, a second?
Ron.
Mr. Kinzinger is the second. You got it, Dell.
Okay, let me share this again. Okay, this is a request by property owners Joel and Patricia Slutsky to create a single lot minor subdivision from the unused detention pond that was part of Riverside Country Estates 1st Edition. The lot is the exact dimensions of the detention pond that was created on the original plat. This property has never been used as a detention pond, was never built, and it went into private ownership. The plat went out for 45-day review, and the only comment we got was from Mark Rogers at the Highway Department, reminding us that that there is a stormwater pipe that runs through the north side of the property, and that an easement would be required for that. So the plat was revised to include a 20-foot storm sewer easement on the north side, which you can see on the screen there. The lot is similar in size to other lots within Riverside Country Estates 1st Edition, and would be bound by the same covenants and restrictions of that subdivision as well. I believe Mr. Dave Tyson is on the Zoom meeting here. If you have any technical questions, he's the engineer of the project.
Is there any questions for Dell or Mr. Tyson from the board?
No, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Lear.
no questions. This is in my district, and some time ago, the county and Bourbonnais Township spent considerable money to help with some drainage problems. Part of that was putting in that storm sewer. I see no problems with this myself.
You concur, Mark, as far as the history and all of that?
The drainage easement should accommodate any drainage issues we have there.
Okay. Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes. Aye. Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Nay.
Mr. Payton.
We'll circle back.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith. Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Akulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Mr. Payton?
Aye for
Mr. Payton.
Just last time, Sam, are you still on?
Maybe
Okay.
frozen.
Mr. Smith still on?
I'm on.
Mr.
I was an aye.
Okay.
We did.
Okay. Motion carries. Moving on. Number 85 on our list, awarding the bid to the lowest responsible bidder, General Energy Corp. Is Wes on the call? I'd asked him to be here for this. This is his project. All right. Let's go ahead and go through it. I will try to answer any questions I possibly can. Hold on just a second, please. I'm sorry.
Oh, how are you?
Hey, what, you know what Wes's extension is?
I'm here, Andy.
Oh, here he is. Never mind. Hold on. Sorry.
You on your way to work?
He's here. Wes is here.
Did you want to get you some? What time?
Thank you. So this is a project that Wes was managing. We brought it to the board. We had this vendor in to talk about it. Do you want to give him a brief background, Wes, on the history for new board members? And
yeah, we had two bids on the project. The first was from Mid-American Group. The second was from General Energy Group. Mid-American's bid for the project was $761,643. General Energy's bid was $737,178. And obviously a major component of this project is the fact that Constellation Energy is going to finance the project for a, let's see, what was the term? Let me look through my notes here. The term, 81 months at 0% interest. So that's obviously a great deal. Obviously, you can't find 0% financing out there very often. And for the money we're going to save at 0% interest, I believe it's a good deal, and the Highway and Building Committee concurred.
Could you explain a little bit about what it is, though? Because some board members may not. It's been a while.
Yeah, we're going to convert all the light fixtures in the courthouse, the annex, the old jail, Jerome Combs Detention Center. It does not include this building. So it's all of those buildings, not 189. And it's going to be a full conversion switch out of fixtures to energy saving LEDs at all those facilities.
And so basically the savings that we'll enjoy in energy are going to pay for the replacing of all this. And Constellation Energy is who we're with as our company as far as providing electricity. They're the ones who are going to front the money for this at 0% interest. They get paid back over the years, and then after 5 years, 81 months.
81 months.
81 months. Okay. Then it's paid for, and then we enjoy the savings.
Yeah. Currently, our current budget right now for those buildings is $43,000 a month for energy. During the agreement, after the LEDs are installed, we anticipate that to go down to $35,357 for a savings of about $9,100 a month. And then there's also some maintenance savings in there as well. But the gist of it is, it's budget positive to the tune of about $242 a month.
Yep.
During the term of the agreement.
And then after that, you see the savings that we'll have after that, based on current rates, obviously. So, I think...
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Hess.
I'll make the motion to approve this, but note on there that this just mentions Jerome Combs on the resolution.
Right, it does.
It says.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying,
currently
yeah.
The Jerome Combs Detention Center uses fluorescent light fixtures.
Right. Yep.
We need to amend that and make the other buildings on there.
Sure. We'll adjust the whereas accordingly. You're right, because it's not just that building. That's where most of the savings is, because they're 24/7.
Correct.
That's a vast majority of the savings is there. But yeah, we'll make that change.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
How many employees will be involved in this project?
General Energy is, because of the jail, they're not going to have very many in there. So we're going to have to work closely with General Energy, our maintenance staff, and corrections. In my conversations with them, we're probably talking 5 to 6 employees working on the project.
Are they county residents?
No, I don't believe so.
So the company is out of where?
Elk Grove Village.
Okay. Is it a diverse workforce?
I'm not aware.
Let me ask you this. I'm a new kid on the block. With respect to contracts being let, do they have to provide you any verification that they have a diverse workforce and a number of employees involved?
They do not. Put it like this: we have the EEOC requirements, and we have prevailing wage audits that have to be done and things like that. So they have to comply in that manner. I don't know that we have ever asked for that because we can't give preference on bids. It's not like home rule. It's a little bit different. We can't have like a local bidder or any of that other kind of stuff.
I understand that.
Yeah, but I know that I believe it's a minority-owned business. I can verify that.
MBE,
right, I'm pretty sure because we had the principals come down to the meeting, and so I can say that.
Okay.
But as far as their workforce, I don't know who's the guys that are turning the wrenches. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Point of order. We're in discussion, and I don't think there's a second on the motion.
There isn't. Yeah, so you had a motion. Who's the second on
I'll
it?
second.
Colton is the second. Mr. Eckhoff? Okay. Other comments? The committee, Building and Grounds, wanted to have somebody else bid on this per se. So that's why we went back out to check the prices, if somebody else would do it. The initial company had come out and did the surveys and did all the totaling, and we discussed those prices in open meetings. And then the committee said, well, let's find somebody else, which was a little bit unfair, in my opinion, in a big way. But the lower bidder turned out to be the original company anyway, so. Any other thoughts? because they do have to have this complete by the end of the year for us to get the energy credit. So that's why we decided to bring it back now, because there is some work to be done. We were gonna wait until COVID might have loosened up to bring them back, but we just couldn't wait anymore. Okay, roll call vote.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk. Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne. Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton. Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo.
Aye. Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill. Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Dunhill's an aye. Sorry.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra. Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. You circle back on anybody? Good. All right, moving on to, I need a motion to open a sealed bid for the highway department.
So moved.
Mr. Snipes, a second.
Mr. Lear.
Mr. Lear, second.
Peyton was aye on that last motion.
Okay, Sam was an aye. on the
Yeah,
last
got
one.
him.
All right, sorry, roll call vote to open the bid.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk. Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne. Mr. Lear. Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico. Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson. Ms.
Carrico was aye.
Pardon? Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye, motion carries. Your Honor? Do the honors? Yeah, go ahead. You're live. You got the mic.
Okay, good afternoon. At the finance meeting on June 25th, we accepted bids for culverts that were to be delivered to our yard. And after we opened the one bid, it was discovered that a FedEx had delivered a package to the to this building at 7:56 a.m. that did not make it upstairs. So we kept the bid sealed and decided to read it at this meeting because it was delivered, but because of COVID and the conditions downstairs, it never made it upstairs in time for the 9 a.m. meeting. So I'm going to read that bid right now. The first bid that was read was Metal Culverts, and as you can see, they had a cashier's check in the amount of $600, and their bid was $11,746.20. And the last bid is from Contech Engineered Solutions. They have a cashier's check in the amount of $1,000 for the proposal guarantee. They don't have a total on here. I'll have to add this up very quickly.
It's okay, I just can't feel my legs anymore.
Yeah, I'm hurting.
I'm hungry.
I think Jim Byrne said he was sending pizzas to everybody's house, so.
Long delivery for me.
I'm on your way to your house right now.
All right, is there any law enforcement that heard that?
All right, I'll double check this number, but it appears to be $10,512.04. $10,512.04.
Alrighty, so is there a motion to approve the lowest qualified bidder? After, obviously, Mark is gonna verify the numbers, re-add everything up.
Motion made by Carrico.
Mr. Carrico, is there a second?
Peters.
Mrs. Peters? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
I get it.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico. Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson. Ms. Zaculo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Other business, one opening on the Mantino number 9 Drainage District. There's actually only one opening on the ZBA, Zoning Board of Appeals. It's a typo. 3 openings on the Regional Planning Commission, 5 openings on the Kankakee County Board of Health, 1 opening on the Farmland Review Assessment Committee, 1 on the Kankakee River Valley Forest Preserve District, 1 on University of Illinois Extension. Don't know the nature of that appointment. I don't think it's a board member, county board member. I think that's open to the public. 1 on the Essex Township Fire Protection District, 1 on the Kankakee Township Fire Protection District, 1 on opening on the Pilot Township Fire Protection District, and 1 opening on the St. Anne Fire Protection District. Any old business? Any new business?
And just one comment, say congratulations to Mr. Hunter on coming aboard, and also I would like to send special kudos to whomever did that presentation of George Washington and the invocation. Just kudos, it was a very special touch. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Sorry, you were breaking up, Bones. I couldn't hear you. What was that?
We gotta vote on this too.
Can we get by with a voice vote, please?
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Who made the second?
Night.
Motion carries mercifully. Thank you.
We want to argue.